How difficult is raiding in Lost Ark?
Hey everybody, today I'm breaking down what an endgame encounter is like in Lost Ark Korea currently. The fight we're
Is
looking
it Saint? Oh, it is Saint. I'm subscribed to him on my other channel.
at is the 5th gateway of the Legion Commander Albershot's raid. This weekly raid is split into 6 different boss encounters with checkpoints to stop and save the lockout after completing the 2nd and 4th boss encounters. You can reform and pick up where you left off with the same party members or switch it up with replacements if they're also at the same checkpoint.
We're 19 seconds in and I'm already having a PP meltdown.
Loot's also received at each checkpoint in equal proportions, so if you complete Phase 2, you'll earn 33% of the potential materials for crafting the new set. Phase 4 nets you 66%, and Phase 6 gets you 100%. Gateway 5 pits you against the Queen of Nightmares herself, Abershut. She has 23 billion HP in this encounter, evenly split into 200 individual lines of HP. This helps us more easily identify when certain gimmick mechanics will occur at. She has a total of 31 different patterns that can be used in any random order between major HP thresholds. But we'll just be covering the major gimmicks though to keep this video concise. At 180 lines of health, the first major gimmick happens. All 8 players are given a black or white shape. There are 4 shapes, so 2 people will get the same shape, 1 in black and 1 in white. At periodic intervals, shapes will be summoned while you're DPSing Abershut that will float across the screen. You must collect a certain number of shapes depending on which shape you were assigned at the start of the mechanic. Circles have to collect 2, squares have to collect 4, hexagons 6, and star 8. If you collect the wrong color
Star
shape...
8. Is it because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Wait, that's not a star.
Okay. Is considered -1. There will also be patterns that are needles that travel across the screen, homing in on a player for a few seconds before traveling in a straight line. That if you're hit by it...
Chad, this is like basic. When you're a little kid, you have the cube, you put the cube in the cube section, the circle in the cube section, and the star in the... right?
It's a 50% chance it's either a black or a white shape, so it could help or set you back. The other mechanic are long line telegraphs across the entire map.
All in
that
square
if
because
you're
square's the
hit,
biggest hole.
do the same thing as a needle. There's 2 variations of that. One that also summons a needle, which travels in the same direction at a high speed. You have to lower Abershut to 140 lines of health while collecting the correct number of shapes for every player. It's common to...
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what he's talking about, Chad. I haven't followed along on anything he's saying. It's not words to me, it's just like leaking out of my other ear.
Have the correct number of stacks of your shape, only to get screwed over by the last summoning of shapes. Needles and line telegraphs and around 145 lines. If any of the 8 players has an incorrect number of stacks when entering the 140 line gimmick, it's a guaranteed raid wipe and you have to start over.
What? 184 line of the... Dude, he's like measuring 2 centimeters.
At 140 lines, Abershut either has a circle or a cross shape underneath her. This helps us determine where we need to stack with the other player to safely place a symbol on the ground for the next pattern.
Before we basic stuff. Bullshit. This is not basic stuff. Isn't this like the one of the main end game raids?
Stack, we have to dodge line laser telegraphs twice, with the second one giving us about a second afterwards to converge with the other player. If done successful, all 4 players will place a symbol.
Oh, it's like a bait.
In 4 sections of the map, evenly spaced from each other. Abershut proceeds to shift the map, and one of the 8 players has...
This is Dead Mind of Lost Ark. Oh, bullshit. It's like letting level 1 watch an ultimate guide. That's true. That is very true. This is definitely not basic, dude. This is the hardest raid, right?
To guide a certain shaped meteor, it's the corresponding symbol placed in the previous
Exactly
mechanic.
what I talked about, chat. You can shove everything in the square. It's big enough. Actually, maybe...
failing to do that wipes the raid. While doing this, players have to dodge a lot of large AoE telegraphs, the red scary ones that are one-shots. The expanding black hole also has to be avoided, and if it touches another one of the symbols, then it wipes the raid, which is why they have to be placed equidistant apart from one another. If everyone's successful at placing all 4 meteors, then you proceed to the next phase, which is a burn from 140 lines to 110 lines. At 110 lines, Abershut ports to the center and a short intermission plays. 2 large spheres are summoned into the map, and there's also glyphs on the ground which light up that tell us what to do in this mechanic. They indicate the order in which the 3 major targets have to be neutralized with fatigue damage from our spells. Doing this out of order wipes the raid, and taking too long also wipes the raid. At the same time, illusions of Abershut can spawn in up to 6 positions,
like
3 above and 3 below. It's random. Every illusion that gets summoned has to be countered within a second of it appearing. Failing to do so silences the entire party, which screws up the neutralization, and also the illusion blows up and does like 50% of your health. If all the illusions are successfully countered and the 3 main targets are neutralized in the correct order, then you move on to the next phase. The next phase...
Dude, look at how there's like no GCDs or fast. I love fast GCD games.
2 orbs that were just neutralized create portals that lead
I think
to
I'm gonna be a little slow though. FF made me FF made my GCD reaction like really slow, I feel like. I remember I was complaining about this when I first started playing, because WoW GCD is much faster too.
Cube mini boss in a separate area. To pass the gimmick, one player has to collect 12 white orb buffs in the right portal, and then in the left side portal, 4 players have to collect 3 gold orbs each. The 12 white orb player is probably going to have to be a support because the white orbs inflict the DOT, a stacking damage over time debuff on you as you collect each orb. At least one player has to stay outside to deal with Abrashad, or else she immediately casts a raid wipe if there's no one in the area with her. Not collecting the right number of orbs also incurs...
Wait, how many people is this? Just 4-person raid? Wait, 4-player raid, chat?
A raid wipe in the next gimmick, and also the player that stays outside fighting her dies, she also kills the raid. During the battle with the cubes, there's also needles and line telegraphs that can reduce the number of orbs.
So are the other 4 like outside or something, and the other 4 like inside, kind of like Cthulhu?
Collected. Needles drop you to 0 stacks in the left one, and in the right side room, line telegraphs reduce the amount of stacks you've got by 1. Once
like
the cube...
the bottom right is the other party member. Okay.
Are defeated, you gotta exit within like 2 or 3 seconds or else it kills you. After all players have exited, Abrashad begins the next pattern, which reminds a lot of people of Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. She'll summon a huge ball of energy and you have to break an HP shield on her. Afterwards, lines of light protrudes from 8 different positions. You have to maneuver into the lines of light to avoid being silenced, as there's a neutralization check that has to be cleared. You also have to remember where each of these lines of light are, because at the end of this
Saint, you need to slow down, man.
Pattern, after the neutralization check has been succeeded, 5 different safe spots emerge,
it's like
only
trying to
one
go
of which is
M&M
correct
on
to
you.
stand in. The safe one is the one that if you remember where all the lines of light emerge from Abrashad in the previous pattern, it'll form that shape. If players successfully neutralize the boss, stand in the correct safe spot, and have the correct amount of orb buffs on 5 players, they'll survive the raid wipe that follows afterwards. After lowering the boss from 110 lines to 90 lines, players are once again assigned shapes from the same thing as the 180 line gimmick. You have to once again collect the correct amount of shapes by the time you reach 50 lines, while also avoiding a lot more dangerous patterns that begin to emerge at around this point. At 50 lines, you have to once again converge with the other player that has the same shape as you to place the symbols on the ground, but instead of line telegraphs, everyone has to kite 4 meteor drops. You have about 1 second after the last meteor drop to stand within proximity of the corresponding shape to place the symbol. Hopefully at this point everyone has survived and was able to place their symbol to prevent the last 8-player gimmick. As after you successfully guide these meteors into the correct symbol, it's a burn of the last 50 lines to 0 HP.
It's Diva!
Against a torrent of even more deadly attacks. If you've managed to claim victory at this point though, pat yourself on the back, because that was the door phase and the easy part. She takes the battle up in space, and the real battle against the real boss begins at that point.
That was the easy part.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of how difficult is raiding in Lost Ark. This time we're dissecting the finale against the space opera phantom Abrashad. As a disclaimer,
oh my god, dude, this looks so beautiful. Look at this, the background, the boss.
If you're trying to face this boss in the future blind, you should stop watching this video as it contains fight spoilers. Otherwise, this is kind of like a guide, but a really terrible one. The video is just meant for entertainment for people to hear about mechanics that aren't obvious by just watching the gameplay. At the time of recording, this is the highest level encounter in Lost Ark and the most mechanically complex fight to date. Phase 6 is a 20 to 25 minute endurance battle against 28.5 billion HP split across 250 health bars. If you made the DPS check in the previous fight...
I don't know why, chat, for me, if I think of MMO, it's always like 3D, right? What do you call this, chat? What is this POV called? Like World of Warcraft, Blade and Soul, Black Desert, FF. Third person, yes, dude, I wish Lost Ark was third person too, but it wouldn't be the same. I think having it isometric POV, you get to land skill shots, can see a better vision of the game, so it makes sense. But at the same time, I wish it was third person, but it'll be a new try.
In phase 5, your damage is sufficient to clear phase 6 since there's more damage uptime and a longer fight
I remember
timer.
when I first played on Russia, I was
phase
not
6 isn't
using
unique,
POV.
but you're guaranteed 2 legendary engraving books, additional ancient fragments for crafting, and a small chance of looting the highly coveted Esther Stone. Doing this battle is not necessary for anything in particular, but there are achievements linked to it. You can progress your gear fine by opting to skip this fight and just clearing the earlier fights in the raid for materials. Besides for 27 unique attacks, some of which are strengthened after the second half of the fight begins, there are 4 major gimmicks that can be tricky to resolve, 2 which of repeat, and a final desperation.
Dude, this is so cool.
An attack at 1 HP that's mostly for theatrics. The first major gimmick appears at 225 lines of health. All raiders induce a hallucination and are isolated from the rest of the group, while a shape appears throughout their screen. Memorize this shape, since it'll be important in a moment. A demon spawns in the center tile, checking orbs which reduce your movement speed if you're hit by them, but we can cheese this by standing in a narrow blind spot behind it. Afterwards, 2 rows or columns of the map grid will start to light up, and you must navigate to a spot that isn't lit. This is repeated 3 times. While this is happening, you'll occasionally be afflicted with a debuff which flips your controls, symbolized by a purple swirling ball above your head, making your character move in the
Dude, this actually looks so fun. I can't wait to raid.
opposite direction of where you click. This debuff will turn on and off a few times during this. If you're struck by one of the lit up grid spaces, you'll be killed. After 3 of these, everyone is released from the hallucination and Arzondir teleports to the center. They'll start releasing the same orbs from before, which reduced movement speed. By hitting her and standing close by, a shape will appear near her. The one player that saw this shape in the hallucination must guide the other 7 players to the safe grid spots, as Arzondir will repeat the attack again in the same order that they saw it before. Once this is resolved, players can fight again normally, but the next gimmick appears very shortly. Several tornadoes travel across the map, dealing heavy damage to anyone they touch. A few players have a debuff that can be removed if a tornado touches them, but it's important that they don't remove it. If the player still has the debuff and it naturally expires, they're sent to another plane where there's a single black orb. They have a few seconds to destroy it.
Dude, this looks crazy fun.
Should they fail, they're spit back out to join their party, and the orb blows up into a swirling vortex, greatly impeding movement and either pushing or pulling players away gradually. This lasts for a very long time and makes DPSing the boss very difficult, so destroying the orb is important. The more players that lose their debuff by getting hit by a tornado, the more difficult it'll be to break the orb. DPS continues until 188 lines of health. At 188 lines of health, the fight officially begins. Arzondir teleports
The fight officially... What, dude? You've been wrestling with her for 20 minutes. This guy's capping. Saint, you're capping so hard, man. That first part, he's like, okay, this is where the real fight begins. And then he's like, this is where it's
center and a brief intermission plays. Meteors are summoned in, and each of the players is marked sequentially 1 second apart from one another. The raid map is split into a 3x3 grid. Each grid space has 3 HP. When a blue meteor lands on any of the spaces, it reduces the tile's HP by 1. A player marked by a golden meteor reduces the HP of the tile it lands on by 3, as well as all adjacent tiles by 3 as well. The first player during this mechanic is marked with the golden meteor, while the other 7 are marked with blue ones. The raid must carefully place these meteors in such a way that no more than 3 tiles are destroyed at any given time. When a 4th tile is destroyed, Arzondir will immediately perform a raid wipe. Finally, tiles regenerate back into play with full HP 1 minute and 40 seconds after being destroyed.
Fighting
when a
this
tile is destroyed,
like,
it also means the map is struck as well. Like the first Legion General Vulcan, players are instantly killed if they're hit by a stagger, knockback, or knocked down while standing near the edge of the map. You can fall off the map by getting knocked off, but fortunately the game doesn't let you just walk off. After resolving this mechanic, blue meteors will begin to fall on random party members every 1 minute, while golden meteors will select a random party member at specific HP intervals, the next which happens at 137 lines. After 188 lines though, the boss becomes considerably more dangerous. Our moveset is expanded to include several heavy knockback attacks that are designed to smack players off the map. These are the yellow telegraph attacks. No matter how geared you are, if your reflexes are slow here...
Dude, you know what I'm upset about? I just, like, comfortably got an FF. Now I'm gonna have to learn a new... Like, I came from Wild Chat, where I'm just super juiced up and jacked, and came to FF knowing nothing. Now I'm finally, like, at a point where I think my knowledge is a little bit better than before, and I feel comfortable in raids. But we're gonna be going into Lost Ark, and I'm gonna have to learn everything new again, man.
You'll face a death by gravity. It's important to understand what super armor options you have in a pinch. You also have to avoid tanking yellow telegraphs as much as possible, since every time you're hit by one, you'll gain an infinite duration debuff, which at 3 stacks will cause a blue meteor to begin dropping on you. After dealing with the golden meteor, you have to survive for 1 minute and 40 seconds for the destroyed tiles to respawn before entering the 113 line pattern. This is because you'll want the
Okay, here's the thing. I like learning new games and adjusting, but at the same time, MMOs are such a big investment of your time, and it's scary to do that when you're getting older, because you know I'm almost 50, chat, and once you're at my age, you want to invest in smart games. You don't want to like throw all your dice, you know what I mean?
Full map space for what comes next.
Yes.
At 113 lines, a new intermission plays.
I'm 48 years old, chat. Oh my god!
Players navigate to the center and position to dodge a quick pizza attack and then divide themselves to different parts of the map to avoid the giant palm slam in the center.
No, this is
A black
crazy.
hole forms that
That's the
gradually pulls
craziest
players
part.
towards it, and a huge number of red orbs begin flying in from outside of the map towards the center. We can
Chat,
use
this
Esther
is a
Shandy
crazy
here,
fight.
which is kind of like a party ultimate or a limit break if you're coming from Final Fantasy XIV, to slow down time and assist with dodging these.
Oh, that was someone doing the LV3 chat.
The red orbs deal
Or?
heavy damage
Was
and
it?
inflict a debuff on the player if they get hit by it. At 3 stacks of this debuff, the player dies. At the same time, gold orbs will fly in as well. All players have to collect 2 of these in order to survive the explosion at the end. There will also be 4 smaller black hole orbs on 4 of the tiles. 4 players have to each enter one of them right before the pattern ends to avoid getting sucked into the center and pulled into another dimension. You have to time this carefully, as entering the orb too early won't protect you from getting pulled in.
Chat, let's talk about how epic this music is, how good the graphic is, the fight mechanic. This is so good.
If performed successfully,
I think I
4
peed my
players get
pants.
pulled into the center and sent to a separate plane on the same map, while the 4 that entered the small black orbs stay in the original plane with Albrashut. 8 phantoms of Albrashut appear in the original plane, and the 4 players outside must run close to each of them. If any of the clones turn clockwise or counterclockwise, you've got to notify the team on the inside where that clone is, usually with a ping. This lets them know that the clone will appear on their side shortly at that position. The clone
Do you know one thing that bothers me? Or it doesn't bother me too much as before, but you know how when new MMOs come out, we all start in the same learning curve, chat, and have a good time, but all the Korean players and Russian players that are in America, they're gonna be juiced up, know everything. Dude, we're not gonna be able to catch up to them.
that turns clockwise will appear on the other side and must be
They're gonna
neutralized
own
within
us.
2 seconds, while a clone that turns
PvP and
counterclockwise
PvE.
must be countered. When the clone is dealt with properly, it drops a golden buff that gives the player in the inner dimension a shield that lets them survive the explosion at the end. Of the 8 clones, 2 will turn, and this repeats in a second wave for a total of 4 clones and 4 shields when dealt with properly, allowing all 4 players inside to survive. If a clone isn't properly countered or neutralized, not only is a player guaranteed to die since they won't have a shield, the clone also drops a blue meteor on the tile that they were on, potentially destroying it, which can kill players on the outside as they won't be able to see the meteor itself. The entire mechanic takes place on 2 versions of the same map, and so quick communication and cooperation is needed for everyone to survive this. From this point onwards, most of Albrashut's random attacks have been strengthened and have additional mechanics that you'll have to deal with. The next gold meteor appears at 87
Welcome
lines.
back, Savix.
At 66 lines, tornadoes will appear again, and the
JMC.
debuff players once again
Thank
have to
you.
destroy the orb to prevent the vortex from spawning. A spawn vortex is especially deadly at this stage of the fight, where Albrashut has her expanded, strengthened moveset. There's one final golden meteor at 37 lines. After you deal with it and reach 28 lines, the dream world pattern repeats, and you must once again memorize the shape and the safe spots to navigate to. As part of the map is destroyed at this point, it can be tricky to navigate from one side to the other, but if you manage to prevail at this point, you're on
this
the home
shape
stretch.
circle?
At 25 lines, Albrashut will destroy the 4 corners of the map. She'll no longer kill the entire raid if more than 3 tiles are broken. However, as blue meteors are still spawning, the map will gradually get smaller until only the center tile remains. The goal is to bring her down to 7 lines of health before this happens, as the smaller the map is, the more likely people are to get knocked off. At 7 lines of health, the final major gimmick begins. In an act of desperation, Albrashut will begin to summon one last giant meteor designed to wipe out the party.
Oh shit! Oh shit! This is crazy. Dude, I love the cutscenes.
During
in
its slow
this game.
descent, you had to break through a 22.8 billion HP overshield that she gains, or 200 additional lines of health before the meteor lands in 2 to 3 minutes. If you're tight on DPS on this point and you were getting close to the 20-minute in-range timer, 5 minutes are added, so you don't have to worry so much about it. And any of the broken tiles, besides of the corner ones, are brought back into play right away. 200 more lines is ridiculous though, and the following mechanic is designed to help you punch the
Dude, you know how the HP bar, they were going from like 200 to 7, and then she went in this mode, and she has another 200 set of health you need to burn down.
shield. While battling Albrashut and chipping away the shield, the screen will flash at the 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 11 o'clock positions. This signifies that a counterable meteor will be flying in towards the center of the map. This will happen 5 times, once in each direction, and 1 more time in one random direction. When the meteors arrive, they'll either flash red or blue. Blue ones have to be countered, while red ones have to be ignored.
Chad, you know this man spent 1 million of hours in here just wiping and wiping. To have this amount of knowledge in this place, you had to be in here for a while, just seeing the same mechanic over and over again. He knows way too well. He's been in here for a long time, dude.
ignored altogether. If a red one is countered, it'll explode, dealing heavy AoE damage to players and likely knocking them off the map. When a blue meteor is successfully countered though, the player receives a buff that when expires, fires a long-range laser that'll deal about 14 lines of damage to Albershot's health. In total, 5 rounds of meteors will appear, of which at least 15 will be counterable, and 14 is practically required to meet the damage check. Have people in each of the quadrants with excess players prepared to assist in case 2 blue meteors appear in one quadrant. If you fail to break the shield, the final meteor lands, killing everyone. But if you succeed, then buffs will scatter across the map. Players only need to pick up 1, which will grant them a shield that lets them survive the meteor. Finally, bring Albershot down to 1 HP and the last gimmick occurs. An orb spawns at the 7 o'clock position, which she summons in order to wipe out the remaining players. The orb has to be destroyed with normal damage before she can. However, it regenerates 40 million HP per second. As you hit the orb, buffs will pop out of it, which when collected greatly increase your damage output, stacking up to 9 times.
Yeah, that's
Pick up
what
as
I'm
many-
saying. One person messes up, you have to redo the whole thing up to this point again. Oh my god. Oh my god, such a long fight. It's such a long fight.
orbs as you can, and then nuke her last attack faster than it can regenerate, bringing an end to the fight once and for all. Please stop watching here if you want to avoid story cinematic spoilers. And that's it. While there will be raids in the future that are tougher, Albershot's raid is definitely the most visually stunning. Sometime in 2022, we'll also have to deal with this encounter on Hell mode, which has equalized gear, tighter DPS checks, additional mechanics, and a prestige achievement for completing both this encounter as well as the previous one from the other video back to back with no restarts and not a single death across the entire party. I look forward to showing you all that encounter whenever it comes.
Chat, that looked easy. Let's be real. That's easy, chat. We need something harder, right, chat?